Redraw that. That was pretty bad. All right. Still not square. Okay, so if versus Male's method, I got my 4 beds that, or 4 feet that way, and 4 feet that way. Still out of square. That's why I draw most of this stuff before I do the video, because although that is a pretty good copy of a great piece of art that I have, it's not exact. So I'm really not that good of an artist. So anyway, so we're gonna compare this 3 foot to this to the 3x6 to the 4x4 Mel Bartholomew suggestion. And what I find is I can only reach in that 22 inches this way, 22 inches this way, or 23 inches, whatever it was, that way, and that way. So the center bed here, right here, these two guys, I'm always struggling, or center 4, I guess. I'm always struggling, and not all your plants are going to be on this grid pattern to get to. So the center 4 feet then becomes a lot more difficult than it was here. I'm always having to walk all the way around the garden to do anything. So that I broke away from that method. It works for some people, it doesn't work for me. If it works for you, great. You know, if you're 6 foot tall, it's probably awesome. You've got no problem. But I'm not. So that is one reason I've gone to this 3x6 method. The other is it's cheaper for me to build. And which is probably going to lead us into one of the downsides of a raised bed garden, is that there is an initial expense that you don't have. You've got your dirt here. All you got to do is work. You have to put labor in to build it. With these, there's a little more expense because you have to buy the material to make the raised bed. What I use is cedar fence boards, because they hold up and they don't deteriorate as quickly as say pine. And cedar fence boards, the standard size for a cedar fence board is 6 feet. So 6 feet is my length, here to here. And if I cut one of those boards in half, that gives me my 3 feet. So they're just the right lengths for me without a whole lot of waste. I don't want to pay for material I just throw away. So I've got the 6 foot and I've got the 3 foot out of the standard length of cedar boards. And so I'll build my sides, and then I'll take some boards and I'll cut them, and I'll build my 3 foot sides. So that gives me that 3 foot by 6 feet. So it's convenient. So there's that convenience. Which kind of brings us into the downsides of the raised beds, and which is obviously it costs money to build them. Now I've found for me to build a 3x6 bed, it costs me about $20 to $25 a bed to build. And that's using cedar boards, which are terribly expensive, and using some pine for the supports, because what you'll have to do is you're gonna have to build supports. And what I do is I'll put a 2x4 here, 2x4 here, 2x4 here, and here, and I'll screw these cedar fence boards into those faces. And sometimes I'll put one in the middle, because there's a lot of weight with that soil here, and these guys will start to balloon out of shape. They'll get big bellies. And if you see some of the later videos of my garden, you'll see that most of my garden beds are kind of shaped like me. They got a little bit of belly sticking in them. So I do some, I'll put some there. Those pine boards will rot out fairly rapidly. And so this is another downside to the raised beds, is maintenance. You're in a constant state of repair with them. These pine boards are rotting out, and you'll have to, these boards will pop loose, and you have to screw them back on there. The pine boards will rot out and you'll have to unscrew everything, dig them up, put some new pine in there. Now I could spend a little bit more money and buy some cedar. If you want to do that, buy some cedar. You want to avoid using any pressure treated materials. Anything that's going to imbue toxins into your soil. You don't want to introduce that to your plants. Some of it's designed to kill plants. So, not that it probably won't kill your plants, but the problem you might look at is a secondary exposure by ingesting some of these toxins that your plants absorb. So you want to avoid using pressure treated materials. So another downside, I'm going to try to cover this quickly because I'm kind of getting long-winded. Another downside is when you build this bed, you got to come up with something to fill it with. You don't want to go digging a hole out in your yard to put soil in your bed. So I find I use a lot of compost to get it started, but compost dissipates over time. Your plants absorb it, it breaks down, it evaporates, it goes away. And then you have to constantly fill your beds with that compost, which is not a bad thing because you want to be bringing fresh compost to your garden. So you have to find some material to fill these beds with. You can do that by going to your local nurseries. A lot of them will be selling garden soil there. They sell compost, they sell things. So you can buy some garden soil and fill your beds. This again, it takes us back to this guy, cost. So they are more expensive to get started. Once you're started, you're in pretty good shape, but they're still at expensive maintenance. That is another downside to the raised beds. Another downside is moisture retention. Raised beds, because the nature of them being raised up out of the soil, they don't retain the moisture as well. The moisture percolates through the ground and into the soil beneath, and the sun beats on the beds. Again, that's great, it's warming it up, but you're losing moisture because it's evaporating off into the atmosphere, because these beds are going to run a little warmer than the soil around them. So they're going to wick out water two directions pretty rapidly. Maybe more directions. They probably wicks out of the sides also. So moisture retention is another downside to the raised bed. What I didn't touch on in ergonomics also is because they're up off the ground, you don't have to hump over quite as far. It's kind of nice not to reach all the way to the ground to pull weeds. You can kind of reach out a little ways and pull them. I don't ever suggest building your beds much more than 16 inches high because of that moisture loss. You want to kind of keep them a little lower, and I don't suggest building them less than 6 inches. I've found that doesn't help with the weeds. The weeds kind of get right in there quicker, those little quack grass shooting through. They don't have that surface area exposed here that's getting warmed up by the sun. So I suggest a minimum of 10 inches, but not going much more than 16 inches. Even though that would be more ergonomic for you, you wouldn't have to bend as far, that moisture loss isn't worth the trade-off in my mind. Now, if you find it different for your region, maybe you get more water in your region, rain, go for it. For me, where I am at in the high deserts of Eastern Oregon, it's not a plus. So anyways, that's some of my points for why I have to do a raised bed. If you say raised beds don't work, tell me why. Tell me it's a bad idea. Explain it to me. Maybe they just don't work for you. We're all, just kind of doing things our own way. I don't think there's any set rules for gardening other than enjoy yourself. That's the number. So in the end, we all want to be these guys. We want to be happy gardeners. So I'll see you guys later. Like and subscribe, comment below, help me learn to be a better gardener. I'll try to share what I'm doing, and if you'll share what you're doing, we can all learn something. See ya.